This extraordinary footage clearly shows an egg-shaped object dangling in a sling below the belly of a helicopter.
Okay.
This is really Just Stop. Here's Ross, the host with today's dose of common sense.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome back. I haven't had enough coffee this morning to deal with this bullshit, but let's talk about last night's Newsnation program with Ross Coulthart and super secret UFO whistleblower Jake Barber. We watched it last night, and it was amazing in its predictability and just sadness. It was sad. If you watch the video I did in anticipation of this program coming on, I mentioned certain people and said how they all had to be involved in this whole thing, and it was all true because, as I said, it is the usual suspects involved in this thing. And this time they got a little off into the weeds in the woo-woo stuff, like, I don't know, like spiritual experiences. And there were shades of Stephen Greer and making psychic connections to UFOs and, calling them and enticing them to show themselves and things like that. And it was painful, very, very painful to watch. There was a lot of faked video of Barber acting like he was some kind of super soldier, some sort of, I don't know what, but it was comical. And a very brief video of one thing that you just heard. The narration before it. And so, well, we're gonna listen to it again, and I'm gonna let you watch it. So let's go to the screen share. If you missed it last night, this is the big reveal of the super secret UFO stuff that's been happening, and that Barber was directly involved in. So here we
UAP
go.
craft retrieval program. This extraordinary footage clearly shows an egg-shaped object dangling in a sling below the belly of a helicopter.
Does it? Oh my God, yes it does. It really does. That's exactly what it's showing. The thing rolls around on the ground a little bit.
To take a closer look. That's
slow
an
it down.
egg-shaped UAP suspended from a 150-foot long line.
Yep.
We're told the craft is about 20 feet long. The egg suspended in a cradle. And look how careful the pilot is as they bring their precious cargo
You gotta be
into
careful,
land.
'cause-
Let's freeze frame here.
Yep. Let's not freeze frame there. Let's freeze frame a little bit farther back. Let's
20 feet
slowly go
long.
here. I'm gonna stop
The egg
it.
suspended in a cradle. And look how careful the pilot
Look
is
how
as they
careful.
bring their precious cargo into land.
Okay. Do you see the outside on the right-hand edge there, where they're saying, this is a perfectly egg-shaped thing, and all of that? Well, it's not. And it's rolling.
Freeze
And
frame.
it looks to me like the straps on the cradle that they're carrying the thing in are leaving indentations on the thing, the egg.
Here to look at one of the clearest images of a UAP ever taken.
Yep, one of the clearest images of a UAP ever taken. and it's not a UAP. It's a balloon. At least that's the general consensus, and I kind of agree with it. Um, there are a lot of aerostat blimps out there. They use them for surveillance platforms, and I'm pretty sure I talked about it before on a previous episode of this, but that's exactly what that appears to be, like a medium-sized one that would be used short range. It'd probably be tethered to the ground, and they do occasionally break free of their tether and they fly away, or they crash, or they put it somewhere and something happens to it, and so it just slowly descends down to the earth and you have to go pick it up. Well, if it's in a place that's inaccessible to vehicles like trucks, you kind of have to use a helicopter to go get it. And so that's what they do. And I've been involved in the recovery. I wasn't on scene, but I was involved in the planning and the discussions about how to retrieve one of these things. But it was a big one. It was one of the PTIDs in Afghanistan. And high winds, they didn't get it down fast enough, and it broke free from its tether, and it just kind of flew off. And they had to go retrieve it. But by the time we located it, it had already been picked up and dragged into a village by the Afghans. So essentially, we had to go buy it back from them, I think. That used to happen occasionally. We would lose something would crash, and the villagers would run out and grab it and drag it back in. And into their village, and then you would go there and you'd have to negotiate for its release, which usually meant giving them money or something else. So you'd have to buy back your own equipment. And I hope this isn't classified, but at one time happened with a 500-pound bomb. Yep. They did a run, and one of the bombs was a UXO. It was an unexploded ordnance. It didn't detonate. When it hit the ground, it sort of skipped and kind of dug a rut into the soil and was outside this village. And the local villagers went and picked it up and dragged it to their village. Now, in a lot of cases, when you have a large bomb like that and it's a UXO just laying out there in the middle of nowhere, you can call in a second bomb run, and you can just drop a bomb on it and blow it up so that it's not a danger to anybody else, because you don't want to leave that out there. So you have two choices. You can go retrieve it, render it safe and retrieve it, or you can just blow it up in place and just leave it there. So you can send your EOD guys out there. They can throw some C4 on it, back away, and detonate it. Or you can just, if there's a plane available and you want to get rid of another munition, you can just drop another bomb on the bomb and make it go boom. Well, before they had decided which path they were going to take to recover or destroy in place this unexploded ordnance, the local villagers had gone out there to see what it was, and they had rolled it onto a giant tarp thing, and they were carrying it back, dragging it to the local village. Well, now you can't blow it up because it's in the middle of this village surrounded by innocent people who thought, wow, we could retrieve this and maybe there's some usable material in it, maybe some metal or something that we can use, or we can disassemble it and get the explosives out of it and give those to the Taliban. You never knew what was going to happen. So they had to go negotiate the release, just like it was being held hostage, of this bomb. So those things happen, and it happens probably a lot more often than you think. A lot more often than UFO people think, obviously. But the way it moves on the ground, the way it rolls when it hits the ground, and it's kind of a soft kind of thing. It's not, if it was heavy like a metal egg, it would just sit down into the dirt, really. It would just stay there. So the fact that it sits down and it gently sits down and then it starts rolling away, it's really light, and it's probably, I would almost, bet $100 on it that it's a type of balloon. It's a type of aerostat that they were recovering. Not a UFO, not a alien spaceship, not Mork from Ork, which was the funniest thing because that was some of the first things I saw on X after the video was released, was people posting Mork from Ork, Mork and Mindy footage of Robin Williams emerging from this egg, because his spaceship was an egg shape. But it was kind of funny. But, yeah, you're just being duped again. You're just being lied to again. You're being intentionally misled. You're being lied to. These charlatans and grifters and all of the usual suspects were involved, from Lou Elizondo to Gary Nolan. And one of the interesting parts of it, I'm not going to go back and find it because it's somewhere in there, but it was talking about how Barber had, like, emotional issues and psychological issues, and that he has been improving since being under the care of Dr. Gary Nolan. Well, Gary Nolan is not a medical doctor. Gary Nolan is a geneticist. He can't prescribe him any medicines to help treat him for anything. He doesn't have any therapies that can help treat him. He's a PhD scientist. He's not a medical doctor. So for Ross Coulthart to say he's under the care of this doctor, that's bullshit. That's an outright lie, because Gary Nolan is not a medical doctor. So I don't see how he could be caring for Jake Barber. So I don't know. His records have been posted online, so it's not, that he's lying about being in the Air Force. It was kind of funny when Newsnation started putting YouTube videos and stuff out there. They kept, in the little description underneath, they kept describing him as a U.S. Navy airman instead of an Air Force airman. Interesting. They were so good at researching that they didn't even know which branch of the military he was in, apparently. But, yeah, it's just bad. So, I mean, it's not like he wasn't in the Air Force. He really was. He has the commendations. He had his DD-214. For those of you not in the military or have no experience with it, a DD-214 is your discharge paperwork that shows all of your schools that you went to and the awards that you were given, when you joined, when you were discharged, and, how much time you spent overseas, how much time you did this, yada, yada, yada. And your rewards and decorations and stuff. And the nature of your discharge. So I don't recall if that was shown, the nature of his discharge. But he had some pretty standard awards and decorations. And he spent, I guess, 6 years in the Air Force and was discharged at the rank of E4, which in, a lot of other services, that's a corporal or a specialist, E4. And in the Air Force, it's senior airman. And so nothing out of the ordinary there. It's not like he's lying about any of that stuff. He did show copies of orders for him to go to combat diver school with the U.S. Army, which is an interesting thing. So if he went and graduated that's pretty cool. That's a school that a lot of Green Berets go to, so they can get dive certified and stuff, because some of them have special teams that they do. So, I mean, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary with that stuff. I mean, there's no guarantee that he didn't just, make these things up or use somebody else's records and modify them, but it didn't look like that to me. It's usually pretty easy to tell when somebody modifies a DD-214, because for some reason the crappy types, they used to actually use typewriters and stuff, and the crappy printing and all of that used to be on those old DD-214s. It was really hard to mimic that. And now it's all pre-printed, and it's done digitally. It's all done on the screen, and then it's printed out, completed. But in the old days, they used to actually put the page. It was a carbon copy page. I think it was 4 copies. There were 4 or 5 sheets to it. I don't remember, but the member copy was number 4, and you got the top sheet and the number 4. But they would have to put it actually into a typewriter and type the things in by hand. And so it's really hard to make one of those look right, the older style. The new ones are just digitally printed. It's like a PDF that they fill out on their computer, and then when it's done, they print it out. So it's a lot easier to fake a modern DD-214 than it would be to fake an old one from the 80s and 90s. Like my original DD-214 was from the 90s. And so those are pretty hard to fake because they age really poorly. And anyway, it's I don't have any concerns about the paperwork or anything that he showed. I don't think any of it's going to turn out to be faked. except that he was in the Air Force. He was an airman. He was a cargo specialist guy or whatever it was. I can't remember what he said he was, but I don't doubt that he did those jobs. Somehow, after he got out of the Air Force, he became a helicopter pilot and, hey, started doing cool stuff, like working as a contractor and picking up stuff that crashed in the desert. But I find it interesting that there are so many alien spacecrafts that crash on U.S. military test ranges where they fly experimental aircraft and stuff, and do military exercises with aircraft and things that might crash because contractors are out there experimenting with them or flying new designs. And they crash so often, in fact, that they have to contract with helicopter retrieval teams to go pick the crap up after they launch it and it crashes. If you think about how many things that Elon Musk's SpaceX has destroyed, either on the launch pad, in flight, or after it completed, at least at the height of its altitude that it was going that day and then exploded. One just happened the other day. It's not shocking that things fall from the sky when they're still in an experimental stage, or even when they're done and we're using them, because it does happen a lot more often than people want to remember. They don't remember that we lost 2 space shuttles in flight and 2 space shuttle crews, and that there were other space accidents with us and other nations, and things blow up all the time, where you're dealing with large amounts of fuel and ignition and things burning, and you're basically on top of a giant bomb when it launches. If anything goes wrong, you get vaporized. Poof. And we've seen a lot of it. They crash on their way down. They don't hit the pad correctly, like the ones that they're trying to retrieve. So it's interesting that people are still duped by those types of things. And I want to show you something else that's, see if I can find it real fast. Alex Hollings is a guy that I follow. He's really good. He's really good at talking about air stuff, air power, and different types of machines and aircraft and experimental things. And back in the 90s, and this is something I used to talk to people about too, it was back in the 90s, McDonnell Douglas was already working on retrievable launch vehicles. And I'm gonna switch my screen here so that you can see it on X. Let's see if you're watching what I'm watching. And yes, you are. So there were all sorts of interesting things. This in particular was called the Delta Clipper, and it was a craft, a retrievable. It was a vertical takeoff. It could come back down and land. The same thing that Elon Musk has been doing with his rockets, they had been doing for decades. And people get very concerned about, UAP and disclosure and stuff. Well, this is the 90s, the early 90s. So and this is what people, some people out near Area 51 were taken out there and at night, and they filmed things, even during the daytime. One of them was during the daytime. They filmed things flying up in the air and hovering and then moving, maneuvering around, and then going back down. One of them looked like a giant oil drum, and then you had this one that was the Delta Clipper that looks kind of like an arrowhead, or, just the tip of a rocket or a re-entry vehicle, you could say. And so it wasn't the only thing that was out there being tested that way. There were vertical takeoff and they retrievable. They would land. They were reusable rockets. There were several attempts to manufacture these. Obviously, they made them because they have film of them taking off and landing and actually working. And what we're really going to look at is, I want to find the video that Alex Hollings did. This might be the same one, but Alex is my go-to guy for strange things in the sky. But you can see this is back in the 90s. This is exactly what SpaceX is doing right now, 30 years later. Well, how long is that? Yeah, 30 years later, SpaceX is being touted as being this ingenious company, and they're amazing. And look, this is from like 1991. McDonnell Douglas was already doing that. And so how many craft do we have that are flying around in the sky? How many secret craft do we have that use similar technologies that somehow Elon Musk is now capable of replicating when they were doing this decades ago? And it's troubling to me that people are so gullible. And but it's a pretty fascinating thing. I just wanted to show everybody that because Alex posted it last night, and so I was pretty stoked because I hadn't found. There were videos of this a long time ago, and I used to be able to find them and show them, especially the one that was shaped like an oil drum. It just looked like a spinning tin can. It went up in the air, and it looked like it was spinning. And then it would just come back down. They could move it from side to side, and it would move around up there for a while, and it would just go back down and land. But the Delta Clipper, it demonstrates its movements and stuff, and it leans at an angle, and it does different things, and it can maneuver a lot differently. It can actually fly more or less. And yeah, there it goes. It's spinning, and now it's taking off. If you're watching. And it's flying horizontally now. And now it's going to turn back vertical. And it's going to spin around. And people watching this in the sky are going to tell you that it has to be alien spacecraft because there's nothing like it on Earth. But we were doing this decades ago. And if you're still falling for all of this stuff that people see in the sky and go, there's nothing like it on Earth, we don't have anything like that in our arsenal, then you're beyond help because we do, and we have for a long time. And people need to stop falling for this bullshit. What I just showed you on X, the Delta Clipper, is far more advanced, far more interesting, far more exotic than the stupid egg balloon that he had a video of laying on the ground. Stupid. You're going to take technology that's existed for 150 years. When did we start? Actually, it's got to be longer than that. When was the first blimp, the first hot air balloon developed? Let's see. First blimp. Let's see what Google has to say. Yeah, the Gifford dirigible. We used to call them dirigibles, but it's like dirigible. 1852. So technology that has been in use pretty steadily since 1852. People still look at it and think, wow, aliens. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. But anyway, Jake Barber didn't show us anything last night. He didn't say anything. All we got was the same old bullshit. And one thing that annoyed me more than anything is when they're making these documentaries, the host or the newsman, when they're doing a segment and there's a voiceover, they do all their stuff. They get all their footage and all that. And then they go into a sound booth. And I've actually been to a news studio many times at a local news station that I have to go to sometimes. And they have these little booths, and they just go in there and they record this voiceover stuff. Well, that's what Coulthart keeps doing. He's like put his mouth against the microphone and he's pooping right into it. And oh my God, it's annoying. How long has he been a newsman that he doesn't know how to use a freaking microphone yet? How long has he been doing this? It freaks me out when people, this is your job. This is your profession. You don't know how to do that. I don't get it. And Joe Rogan's the same way. He's been doing, hundreds of stage performances with a microphone in his hand. Thousands of episodes of his podcast, the most popular podcast on earth. Thousands of them. And he's still popping his plosives into his microphone every single episode. It's insane. He has producers. Teach him how to use a goddamn microphone. Somebody needs to do the same thing for Ross Coulthart. Now, somebody doing a normal podcast and stuff that happens to do that, just Joe Schmo on the street or whatever, that's fine. It happens every once in a while. Sometimes you stop paying attention to where you are. This particular microphone is really good at rejecting plosives. But a professional newsman, that this is his job to do this stuff? Come on. It's ridiculous. So even the video itself, the whole hour-long thing, was just poorly done. It's garbage, and they're just feeding you just nonsense and bullshit all the time, and it's always the same people. And that whole Shades of Stephen Greer thing, like I was waiting for them to bring him on, but I think his reputation has been damaged so severely by his woo-woo, I can psychically talk to aliens bullshit, that nobody's going to have him on what they're trying, if they're trying to make a respectable news program or documentary about UFOs. So you'll still get him showing up on some podcasts and on some other shows, but I don't think they're going to get him involved in this one because the dude's just a lunatic and he's just a con artist. So those are my initial thoughts on it. It's bullshit. You didn't learn anything new. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry you wasted your time if you watched it, but, I wasted my time to watch it because I thought it would be fun, and it was. We laughed so much during that show because there were just so many things that were comical, just laughable. And I can't take it anymore. These guys they're just a bunch of con artists. There should be a crime against what they're doing because they're just committing fraud. That's all they're doing. They are literally committing fraud. They're profiting off of a bullshit story that they're making up as they go along. And people are paying them to do it. People are paying to see them, paying to listen to them at their speeches, buying their books, buying their videos, going to their programs, participating in their research. And it's all bullshit. It's all a lie. It's all an absolute lie, and it's a fraud. And they should all probably get arrested and thrown in jail for it, even if it's just for a weekend, just to make a point. Because you're committing fraud, literally committing fraud. And it's shameful. It's shameful. I can't stand it. I'm not going to stop talking about it. I'm not going to stop paying attention to it and debunking their bullshit, but laughable fraud. So anyway, you didn't miss much if you didn't watch it. So, next time, maybe they'll have someone actually believable on their show. So far, they haven't. They've all been a bunch of losers. And David Grush. All right, let's go through them. David Grush. Okay, he had a lot to say during his, whatever it was, 3-hour-long testimony in front of Congress. Never said a goddamn thing. Never saw anything. Never touched anything. Nothing. Had no firsthand experience whatsoever. Read some documents that said some weird things and had people tell him some stories. That's it. Lou Elizondo. Never seen a goddamn thing. On there all the time talking, yapping. Oh, I'm an expert. I have firsthand experience. Doing what? Because your testimony said you did not have any firsthand experience. Okay. The Navy pilots. You have no idea what you saw. You don't know if it was an alien, and you don't know that we don't have anything in our arsenal that can do those things. You don't know that because you're just a freaking fighter jock up there flying around in an F-18. You don't know anything about our classified aircraft programs unless you've been read on to them. So you need to stop saying things like, I'm a Navy pilot, I know everything. No, you don't. Sorry, you don't. Apparently you've never seen a Delta Clipper or an Aerostat, which is funny because most of the people in the military have seen some form of that at one time or another. They use them all the time, especially in war zones. They use them as floating surveillance platforms. So there's nobody in them. It's just a balloon with surveillance array on it. It'd be kind of cool if that was your job to sit up there, but you're a sitting duck, and the Taliban used to shoot at them all the time. Anyway, I'm gonna go because I'm just so sad about the state of the UFO community and how laughable they've become. You guys used to be interesting. Now you're just a joke. You're just making yourselves look stupid and pathetic. And I'm sorry. But I'm going to keep watching because I need a good laugh now and then. And I need to come on here and rant and just, offload some of this hostility that I have toward people who are just literally committing fraud against the people who believe them. And it's sickening. Sorry, it is. I'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Really? Just Stop with your host, Ross. Make sure to like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss a dose of some common sense.